As a listener to Impromptu, you obviously value different perspectives. And you understand that journalism is more important than ever. If you haven't taken the step yet to become a subscriber of The Washington Post, this might make a difference. Right now, you can subscribe for just $2 every 4 weeks for your first year. And after that, it's just $12 every 4 weeks. You can cancel anytime. You can grab this offer through the link in our show notes. Don't wait, though, because this offer is only around for a limited time. So hit pause and check out the show notes now. Or go to washingtonpost.com/subscribe. And signing up right now also means a lot to us. It's a meaningful way to show your support for Impromptu. Thank you for listening, and hope you're a subscriber soon if you're not already. On a scale of 1 to 10, how panicked are you about AI?
Oh, man. I'm going to say that I'm a 4 now, and I'll be an 8 by the time we're done with this conversation.
All right, Megan, get Monica started on her upward panic trajectory.
I mean, look, I think for our industry, it should be a panic moment. But I think for America, for the world, it's a good moment, largely. So, I don't know, 8 for me, 2 for the world.
Okay. Yeah, there's this thing called P-doom, which is the probability of doom, as in the probability that AI will cause the extinction of the human race. And I feel like a genius chatbot could translate that into 1 to 10 panic rating, but I'm a lowly human, so I'll just say 6, 7? This is Impromptu from Washington Post Opinions, a show that brings you conversations about the news we can't stop thinking about. I'm Molly Roberts, a columnist at The Post, and this week, we're talking about how AI is changing how people learn, and the rest of our lives too, actually. School is almost out for the summer, but for now, students are stuck at their desks taking tests that are supposed to evaluate their knowledge. It's hard not to wonder about the role AI played for these kids over the past 9 months, whether or not their teachers knew it. ChatGPT and its robot compatriots can write everything from an essay to an excuse for why a problem set was turned in late. They can more than merely spit out the answers to tricky math equations. They can even do what every instructor demands and show the work. Maybe it's good for everybody, especially young people, to learn what AI can do and how to make it do it. That's the world they're preparing to live in, after all. But when is AI a tool that helps people produce the best work possible, and when is it just cheating? I've got 2 of my colleagues here to talk through the AI earthquake in education, but also, more generally, what in our lives we should and shouldn't be outsourcing to the machines. Would you both introduce yourselves?
I'm Megan McArdle. I'm a columnist of The Washington Post, and I write a lot about AI and how it's going to change the world.
I'm Monica Hesse, also a columnist at The Washington Post. I write nothing at all about AI, but I think about humanity a lot and where we're headed.
Well, that sounds good. We will start with the humans then. Tell me a little bit how you guys personally interact with AI, if you do. Maybe the most helpful way you've used one of the tools recently.
Yeah, so the most helpful experience I've had with AI was actually just over the weekend. I live in an old house with sort of hideous butter yellow walls that we've wanted to change since we moved in, but the experience or the process of changing it always seemed really daunting. And I ended up uploading a picture of my kitchen to ChatGPT and sort of explaining, this is what I'm interested in. I don't want to change the cabinets. I want the room to look less yellow. Show me some options. And you know, in a span of 10 minutes, I had 4 or 5 options, and it was not only more efficient, but it was also more useful for me to be able to see this is what the entire kitchen would look like, rather than what I had been doing, which was going back and forth to Home Depot and coming home with a different ugly paint swatch every 2 weeks. So that was, to me, the most personally satisfying experience. A useless task that was important to me and getting a little boost from that.
And what about you, Megan? Are you an AI enthusiast either for home remodeling or anything else?
I use it every day. I don't use it to write my columns. I actually spend a lot of time trying to get it to write a Megan McArdle column, not because I would then publish it, or I might, but with, obviously notifying readers what had happened. No, I'm watching to see the moment at which this thing starts coming from my job.
This is going to be the most egotistical, vanity-related thing that Megan and I both confess to, because I periodically do the same thing. Could you write a Monica Hesse column or a column on this topic in the site of Monica Hesse? And I do it every few months just to be like, is it better than me yet?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've asked it like once to write a Molly Roberts column, but this was ages ago and it was bad. And then I thought, okay, great, it's bad. And now I'm terrified to do it again, because then what do? Do I just give up?
But the thing I normally use it for, like, I use it obviously for research. I use it to suggest people I should talk to. I use it to give me background on topics, to find stuff that, that you could get from a Google search, but you would spend a lot more time. I feed it my columns and ask it for obvious rejoinders. What would a good, smart critic of this column say? And try to incorporate its feedback when I think it's valid. And I mean, one of the problems with AI for a journalist or a newspaper journalist is that we have hard word limits, because our stuff has to go on a dead tree and it has to fit in a physical space, and AI still can't count. So early on, I often write my columns long and then I cut them back. And I was like, this is going to be great. I'm going to write my column long and then we get the AI to cut it for me. And that does not work, because if you tell it 800 words, you'll get like 500 or 1,000. But it's been incredibly helpful to me in my daily work.
No, that's interesting. I think it's particularly interesting that the split that you guys had there, Megan was talking about if she uses it for her work, and Monica was talking about it way more like she uses it for something that she doesn't know much about, the redecorating of the kitchen. So it's a big difference. The main thing that I feel like people are definitely using AI for across the board right now is students at school. It feels like a really new problem, but in a lot of ways, it's a rehashing of old arguments over new tools and technology. Like once upon a time, not that long ago, people worried that graphing calculators were going to let students off the hook for really learning math. And maybe they did. I won't even tell you guys how dear I held my TI-84 Plus Silver Edition in high school. But on the other hand, if a tool exists and it can perform all these nifty functions, do students actually need to learn to do things the old, difficult, boring way? Basically, my question is, how can AI be helpful to students without preventing them from learning what they need to learn?
Yeah, I think about this a lot for a lot of reasons. I obviously think about it in my own life as a writer. Also, my dad was an English professor for 40 years, and he taught rhetoric and composition. He just retired earlier this year and talked a lot about, in his last few years of teaching, needing to create AI policy and needing to address in his classroom what was going to be acceptable and what wasn't. And I struggle with this because I'm fascinated to hear about Megan's process, which I don't use at all. But on a philosophical level, I don't object to Megan's process. And the reason that I don't is because I know that Megan knows how to write. I know she knows how to think. And I know she's using AI as a way to check her work and as a way to sharpen the thoughts that she's already capable of having. There was a story in New York Magazine last week that was really scary because it was students who weren't using it that way, who were instead basically feeding an essay prompt into ChatGPT and having it write an entire essay that they hadn't thought of and might not even have understood once it was done. And then that gets into the questions of how much original thought do you have to produce in order for it to be your thought? And is it really important to learn the basics by yourself before you use AI to assist you? And I mean, I would argue that it is pretty important to learn those basics by yourself.
Yeah, I think I have always had this objection, when math teachers would argue against teaching multiplication tables, for example, or when history teachers would argue against memorizing dates. And they would say, well, we don't want to teach them like just rote facts. We want to teach them how to think. And you have to have something in your head to think about before you can think, right? You have to know something. And I really think multiplication tables are a good example. They seem kind of boring, although I actually liked them. But you now have this kind of matrix that you can use to see mathematical relationships that if you don't have that in your head, you will never see those relationships. And I think that there is evidence that kids who use graphing calculators often don't understand the math as well as kids who did it by hand the old-fashioned way. I was on the bubble of that. I was not allowed to use calculators in high school, but I did use them in business school. And I think I did probably get a slightly better grasp of brute force working through the math in high school than I did in business school. And so I have two thoughts about this. And one is, it is a huge problem that kids are using AI because they're not learning. Engineering a prompt that spits out a paper is not learning something. It's, I guess, learning how to engineer a prompt.
But maybe that's all you need to learn in a world where you can just do that, right? If we view education as purely instrumental, which I guess we don't, maybe as long as I can do the thing with AI, then school has equipped me for the real world and good job, school.
Well, I think that gets to the bigger problem, which is that especially college, but also a lot of high school, it's not really equipping kids for the real world. Very few kids are ever going to use calculus in the real world, right? Very few kids are ever going to use their political science degree or their history degree. College for the past, 70 years of steadily rising returns to having a college education, that happened because college, outside of things like engineering, right, which are very much, skills you need in the workplace, it was a very noisy proxy for stuff employers valued. Just conscientiousness, right? This person will show up for class and turn in their homework. This person has pretty decent cognitive ability. This person has some research and writing skills, right? The degree was somewhat irrelevant to most fields. But the reason that people are paying that kind of money and that the system has expanded so dramatically over the last few decades is that it's a job credential. And if AI is doing all this in the workplace, then why am I getting the college degree that teaches me how to do skills that AI can do, right? I think ultimately what this is actually going to do is it's going to take away a lot of those professional class jobs that college was the gateway to. And the much bigger problem for higher education is not just that they can't figure out how to prevent kids from cheating. It's that they haven't actually figured out what value they're adding in an AI world.
Yeah, well, that's a great question. So I might as well ask it and pose it to Monica. What value are colleges adding, or should they be trying to add in an AI world? And ought that to be geared to the skill set that students are going to need in the AI world, or is it about some kind of broader human enterprise?
Yeah, I think as Megan alluded to, there are really two problems that we encounter when we talk about AI. And the first is purely an economic and job problem, which is what use am I if AI can already do what I can do? Why am I needed? And the second, and this is coming from that nerdy liberal arts perspective and the lofty and optimistic one, but I think that being able to be an ordered and logical and discerning thinker is more important in this current era than it has been certainly at other points in my lifetime. The ability to understand the arguments that other people are making, the ability to understand how to rebut those arguments, the ability to discern between good research and good points and bad points, and what studies have been verified and what studies are double blind, and understanding a fire hose of information, and also having the historical context to understand that information. Why are people upset by certain catchphrases? Maybe because those catchphrases were popular in Germany in 1930, and it's useful to understand the long breadth of humanity that bubbles up when we're having these conversations. So I think that colleges can and should still be a place to produce those kinds of abilities, which are hard skills, which are not just soft skills. They are skills that can and should be taught. And I think that AI ends up doing an end run around a lot of those skills. As Megan said, not only is AI famously bad at counting, which is why we have hyper-realistic paintings that still have people with 17 fingers on them, but AI is also famously bad at sourcing, which is why you see examples of college students producing papers that look like they have meticulous bibliographies, and then it turns out that half of those books don't exist or were used improperly. And I think that that's a gap that needs to be filled, not really because it will make us better productive workers, but because it's sort of necessary for humanity to not completely dissolve.
So we're going to talk more broadly about what skills we need in the professional world in the AI era and what it might mean if machines start handling much of what our own minds currently manage, besides the production of 17-fingered gloves. That's right after the break. Welcome back. I'm Molly Roberts, and this is Impromptu. What do you guys want AI to be able to do for you or anyone around you? What does your dream world look like as far as the roles these robots play and the roles they don't?
I want the Jetsons, man, right? I want like the little thing that comes out of the ceiling and just sets my hair. I want, I also want great medical research. I want it to, give people longer, healthier, happier lives. I think it might actually reduce a lot of the inequality because what it's going to do is compress the professional class back down towards the middle class.
What about you, Monica?
I'm going to speak on a really pedestrian level because so much of what I write is about gender and particularly about the lives of women. In my world, my dream for AI would be a drastic reduction of the mental load that I and most parents are carrying around at all times. I mentioned my kitchen. The other useful thing that I've used AI for recently is typing in the prompt, please create a menu for a preschooler on a 2-week rotation for a school that does not permit nut butters and a child that does not like sandwiches. Please add a shopping list and a grocery store where I could locate all of these items. And it took 3 minutes. And that would have taken at least an hour if I had done it on my own. And I feel most comfortable with AI in my private life when it is offloading the work that I find tedious, but the work that is necessary for my home to function. So I am terrified about a lot of things related to AI, but the areas that I do see promise in are the areas that can lessen the loud banging noise happening in the minds of a lot of particularly parents and mothers that I know.
I love that because every week I ask my husband, what do you want me to cook for dinner this week? And he goes, I don't know, whatever you like. And it's like, I don't want to think of it. Like, that's the work I don't want to do. The cooking is fine. You tell me what to cook. I'm thrilled, but he cannot. I'm sure a robot can. And his tastes aren't that complicated. They can figure it out. I want it to do the menial stuff. What I'm really worried about is it takes care of the menial stuff. Great. But then the more meaningful stuff, like my job, it's able to do too. And that's less valuable and it doesn't matter as much that I'm doing it. That's what I'm scared of. And then I'm also scared of the possibility that if we ask machines to do too much for us, we lose something along the way. Do you guys think that we become stupider every time we don't have to come up with our own column topics? Or say less empathetic every time we have AI write maybe a bereavement note to someone who's lost a loved one? I mean, that feels like a callous thing to do, but bereavement notes are hard. I can imagine people thinking, I just don't have the words. Maybe ChatGPT does. Or do you guys think our brains will busy themselves developing more fully on things that AI can't do and won't ever be able to do?
I will start by saying that I never have AI write anything that I'm writing to someone else or writing for work. Because to me, writing is so important, right? It's so central to who I am. And I would also say, so I went on this painting excursion at a conference I was at, and I've never painted. I'm not a painter. And it was not the best picture ever painted, right? But it was really enjoyable and I think valuable, even though I am not Matisse.
Don't put yourself down.
Yeah, well, you haven't seen the picture. I'm going to make my husband hang it in his office and pretend he likes it. But I think those are two really important ways of thinking about what it means to be human. And that's, first of all, that we don't want AI to take the things that are central to our identity. And the thing I have to remember is that for most people, writing is not central to their identity. They find it difficult, they find it tedious, and they are happy to have a machine do it. And I'm actually okay with that, right? I think if you are a bad writer, outsourcing the bereavement note, as long as you're checking it and you're telling it what to say, But at the same time, you should not outsource your human relationships to AI. And this is something that actually worries me, treating it as a guru or as a friend. Mark Zuckerberg talks about creating AI friends for people. And I think that's really unhealthy. And so what I hope is that we will make cultural choices about what we're doing with this to offload some of that mental load. But also, I do think that it's going to be bad for professional class jobs on average. But I also think that professional class work culture is really bad for families, right? Where the more hours you put in, the better you get at your job, the more opportunities you have. And it's really hard to reconcile those jobs with full-time parenting. And so to the extent that it actually shifts that, I think it could be good. It's going to place a premium not on what has been true in the last 40 years of increasing returns to the ability to manipulate digital symbols, to work with data. And it's going to place a premium on being physically present and on being good at dealing with other people and making relationships with them. And we could choose to lean into that. And we can choose to invest the extra time that we have in creating meaningful alternatives to making work our central identity, whether that's religion or community groups or hobbies or whatever. Just think how fun it was to sing with other people at camp. Not because you're a great choir. It's just fun. It is this wonderful feeling of being in a group of human beings doing something together. And we should make a conscious cultural choice to choose more of that over more engagement with the AI.
Yeah, once the AI starts singing, that's when we're really in trouble. Monica, what do you think? What do we lose? What do we gain?
Well, I first want to acknowledge that the picture that Megan painted is lovely and something that I would like for my own life. And I want to acknowledge that the question that comes next is, while we are choosing to spend more time singing and creating and doing all of this, are we still being paid, or are we all fired because, employers don't need us anymore?
Yeah, we're all on the OpenAI dole.
Right. If I have all of this time to produce art, but the reason that I have this time is because there are no jobs for humans and I can't feed my family, then my ability to endlessly produce art is not useful to me. So I hate to go in this direction, but there's like a capitalist and a regulation question of how responsible industries are going to be, or how responsible the government is going to be in making sure that if we are relinquishing all of our work to AI, we are also creating a society where our living standard is not tied to the work that we can no longer do. I think that that's a whole can of worms that I will let other people deal with. What I'll say in terms of what we're losing and what we're gaining is, Molly, you opened this conversation in a really smart way by acknowledging that this is not the first time that humans have had existential questions about what technology was going to do and how it was going to shape us. Like Megan, I kind of grew up learning how to use card catalogs in grade school and having librarians talk about how important it was to learn how to use a card catalog, because it was how you learn to organize your thoughts and organize your topics. And I'm now fully convinced, as are most of us, that is absolute baloney. Like, a card catalog was not a useful tool for my human development.
It's a lost art.
And I remember when Twitter came out, having this conversation. And the upshot of Twitter in my life is that it made me a better, funnier writer, because the initial 144 character limit made me think hard about the meticulousness of language and the economy of words. And the thing that we were told was going to flatten us and make us stupid because people only wanted to talk about breakfast and, the inanity of their lives, ended up having some unforeseen benefits in the way we sharpened and honed our abilities. So I will say right now, it is really easy for me to see AI's existential downsides. It's easier for me to see the practicalities in my own life, the menu creation, the kitchen repainting. And I think that the space that I'm interested in is the parts that I cannot yet fathom, which is what parts of our brain will it unlock that I can't even picture yet.
Okay, well, we have to wrap this up. At current productivity rates, there are only so many hours in the day. It was really great talking to you both. Even better, dare I say, than talking to two of the most brilliant robots. So thank you so much for taking the time.
You are welcome just for calling me a brilliant robot, so.
Better than a brilliant robot.
In conclusion, ChatGPT thinks my kitchen should be teal, and I'm coming around to agreeing. And thanks for having us.
Thank you both. This episode was produced by Hadley Robinson and Regina DeHeer, edited by Jasmine Green, and mixed by Emma Munger. Special thanks to Millie Mitra and Deirdre Byrne. Thanks for listening to Impromptu. Please, send us your thoughts about AI, education, and the future of work, but write them yourself. Email impromptu@washpost.com. And remember to tune in on Tuesday to hear our colleague Dana Milbank tackle the biggest political news of the moment. A reminder that right now, and for a limited time, you can become a Washington Post subscriber at an incredible offer. $2 every 4 weeks for your entire first year, and then $12 every 4 weeks thereafter. You can cancel anytime. You can become a subscriber right now through the link in our show notes, or go to WashingtonPost.com/subscribe. That's WashingtonPost.com/subscribe.